This is Shock Life Confessions podcast with me, Reza Abraham. Today's guest is someone who started his journey from a humble beginning and grew to become one of the youngest and most successful politicians in Malaysia. With me, YB Syed Saddiq. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Reza.
My pleasure.
I'm humbled by your introduction.
Why?
I just realized I'm actually not that old.
Really?
Is it 25? I'm only 30 now. In 5
Wow.
years, a lot of things have changed.
What has changed?
For one, I definitely have learned that I need to have a life outside of politics. Go on a holiday, and take a little bit more chill pill than fighting all the time.
So we are now dealing with Syed Saddiq 3 series.
Just entered my 3 series. Yeah, don't know whether that's a good thing or not, but I'll just go with the flow.
So what do we expect from Saddiq in 3 series?
It'll be a lot more calibrated. In your early 20s especially, you're a lot more of a firebrand. You're not risk averse. You want to take on the world no matter how difficult and tough it may get. I'll still keep that level of idealism, but at the same time, a lot more calm and composed instead of pursuing every single battle which confronts itself. So I think a lot more calm, composed, and measured in my actions.
Sure.
Yeah.
So although you are in your 30s, you're still the youngest among your siblings.
Yeah.
And so I want to go back a little bit when you first joined politics. And so I believe that it was a massive change in the way you do stuff.
Well, definitely.
Everything around you has changed.
Yeah.
So how was the change for your siblings, seeing their younger brother joining politics? Have you had any of your siblings ever interested in politics?
None
before
at
you?
all. I mean, I'm the first, not just among siblings, but in my whole family to ever step foot in the
Both
world
sides,
of politics.
mother and father, both.
Yeah, definitely. My father was a Singaporean, so never into politics. Did a lot of menial jobs. Commuted from Johor to Singapore every day. My mom is a civil servant. So I come from a family of civil servants, especially from my mom's side. I myself was a part-time lecturer before I stepped foot into politics. So in my family, I'm the first. Whether the last or not, who knows? Hopefully the last. I mean, it's a really tough.
Why do you say that?
If possible, I want to separate personal life and politics. Me personally, I know I can't, but at least for my family or future family. So I'm the first, but being the first, I'm also very privileged because my siblings and parents are very understanding. Politics can be very punishing, especially prior to 2018, where Malaysia never had a change in government since independence. So being affiliated to anyone in opposition is tough. But I'm very privileged to have such a supportive family, being with me all the way in the toughest of times, the best of times. If I were not given that emotional support structure, to be honest, I wouldn't know if I'd be able to march on until today.
So what are the values that you have developed growing up?
From my mom, definitely diligence, discipline, compassion. I mean, my mom served her life as a teacher, teaching English, Bahasa Melayu, a couple of subjects. And not only did she teach in public schools, but she also set up her own tuition class. Not the big tuition center, the small room at home, the cikgu dekat rumah. So she did that. But what made a very strong impression on me was not just her as a teacher, was that she would take in a lot of students who came from underprivileged backgrounds who couldn't pay to enter a tuition class for free. And she often picked them up either from school, where she would already identify students from different classes who come from underprivileged families, and also at times from the petrol station. There's a Caltex near my house, and then my mom will see, there are some students who are just sitting there to sell, back then sell fruits and small stuff. Yeah. Then she'll call them up, where are you from? Where's your family? Where do you stay at? And then if my mom realized that they come from an underprivileged background, contact the mom, bring them in to my mom's tuition class and give them free tuition for 1 to 2 years until they succeed. And I've witnessed how those who my mom gave an opportunity now have succeeded in different ways, which made me realize that the smallest of changes can bring the biggest of changes in life.
True.
So,
True.
yeah.
Is that developed the sense of servanthood in you, that you want to serve the people and the community as well?
Definitely. I mean, the culture of service was something which I picked up from my mom the most. I mean, she's a tiger. She's a tiger mom. Not just towards me, but towards all her students, to the point that all her students would call her Umi, which means mom. And I get jealous at times, like, who are you to call my mom your mom, right? I don't call her Umi, I call her Mama, but still, this is a young, protective Syed Saddiq. But at the same time, I witnessed how she would really put in a lot of work to ensure that every single one of her students will succeed. Not just giving free tuition classes, but at the same time, not just being very fierce towards me, but towards all her students in her own classes. And a lot of them today are very successful, and they still have very fond memories of being taught by my mom. So that level of service really came from my mom.
I hear the word that just now you said, that she makes sure that every one of them. So that sense of inclusion, I can see that even in the craft of your politic, it appears a lot. So you always like championing the message of like inclusions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, inclusions can be very wide, right? So how does that impacted you, like you try to achieve?
I mean, I don't have to go far. I mean, just looking at the students who my mom teach, you'll see that diversity is there. And it has been there in my life for a very long time. However, if you were to meet me when I was much, much younger, I was a completely different person.
How is it?
Where inclusivity wasn't my trait. So I call that toxic Syed Saddiq, right? Or in Bahasa I call it Zaman Jahiliyah, the dark days. Where I was sexist and racist. I say sexist to a point where when my sister did very well and was about to become a lecturer, I would judge her. I said, why you want to become a lecturer? Why you want to study so high? Just stay at home.
This is what age?
12, 13, 14.
Oh, okay.
Before I entered military college. Military college was like the Renaissance, opened up my eyes to many things. But it was then. Even though it was completely different, right? Because my mom was actually very open. I mean, she taught students from all backgrounds, gave them a chance like any other. Everyone was her anak, was a son or daughter. All have to call her Umi. But I think I was very different in a very weird way. But then when I was sent to military college, and that was the most multiracial boarding school in Malaysia, which incidentally was also Malaysia's only military college, RMC. That's where I think it really changed me in terms of discipline, opening up my eyes to how diversity is an asset and not a liability, and that our lives, one way or another, are interconnected with one another, regardless of which race and religion you are born into, and that our country's journey, success or failures, are largely tied to its populace, and its populace is diverse. So you have to face it one way or another. So instead of merely tolerating diversity, we should be celebrating diversity. And that's something which I picked up fairly quickly then.
Inclusion by itself, it also brings a lot of disagreement and conflict.
Yeah.
And I think we Asians, we don't like conflict. We rather have a harmony at home.
Yeah.
So how does that journey of inclusion evolve in you from someone who's championing it, and now that you are entering your 30s, so we might expect a different Saddiq as well, because your definition of inclusion might change too. So you are trying to save certain things, but then there are people on the other side say like, no, this is not good. We rather have like the old way of doing things. So how have you evolved in that sense of like your definition of inclusion? Can we satisfy everyone? Because a lot of people would say like trying to please everyone is a system to failure.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to please everyone, don't join politics, because politics is about change.
Yeah.
And in the future, I will be changed as well. I may be the convention and the mainstream, and there will be many others who are younger than me, who will be that voice of change and disruption, and I will be replaced. And I think that's great. I look forward to that day where I can finally, retire in peace and someone else will take over. And that's something which we need to accept in politics, that it's never perpetual. You're never there to stay forever. And you must embrace that level of change, because in the end, it's not about you or your journey or your legacy. It's really about the country's journey and legacy. You're merely a vehicle at that point in time. And at one point in time, you will be an outdated vehicle and someone else will take over. So, if anything, I think disruptions will be one of the most important ingredients of success in Malaysia, right? So there will be many who may dislike it, but disruption often brings innovation, change, new ideas, fresh, energetic people in. So for those who want to resist it, they can. For those who are young, who are scared to embrace new ideas because of resistance, they can do that. But you will be left behind, because there will be many others who will be daring enough to pursue the path not taken. And to me, in the end, there will always be a balance between disruption and stability, and our country will find that moderate path in how we move forward.
Yeah. So disagreement, if it's like comes from people, friends, you can just unfriend. What if that disagreement come from family, like your siblings, parents? Have you ever had like that disagreement with them over certain?
Oh, of course, definitely. Many
How
things.
do you deal with that?
My family, especially my mom's side, has been traditionally strong UMNO supporters who then were in direct opposition to what I believed in. But this is where you have to learn diplomacy, and diplomacy is not just, on an international level. It starts at home, right? How do you build a culture of agreeing to disagree? How do you convince without being rude and arrogant, right? Because being young, you start to believe that you're always right and everyone else is wrong, and that, generation as it, you're so outdated, you don't understand. But at the same time, you also try to understand where they are coming from. That's something which I learned through debating, right? In debating, you
Their
are
side
given
of the story.
Yeah, you are given a topic 15 minutes before you speak, and you're not given the flexibility in deciding which side you are on, right? If you have to debate about Israel and Palestine, there will be times where you will have to defend a particular side which you're uncomfortable with, right? But being in that position means you need to know arguments from both sides in order for you to become an informed and competent debater. So similarly, when it comes to politics or conflict management, the best way for you to address a very high tension point is to understand where they're coming from, calm their nerves by saying, okay, I'm listening to you, I hear where you're coming from. However, have you considered this viewpoint? Why do we meet a middle? Why do we meet a middle on this point? Right? So I think debating has allowed me to deal with this kind of conflict management, and in really finding a middle path to move forward. Because in the end, we may think that we are ultimately right, that the science and data is with us, but in the end, if you cannot convince the other person to come along, then it will be a very lonely journey.
Yeah, that's actually something that I remember in my work, which I work with a lot of corporations.
Yeah.
It happens very often that we often say them something like this. They say, debate, agree or disagree, commit.
Yeah.
It means that even if you disagree with him, you have to commit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would fail. So as a leader, as a young leader who's like entering into this politic, arena, which is like a lot of old school leaders are there and have been there, and they've been doing this for a very, very long time. How do you get their commitment?
First thing first, do not believe that debating is all about being right and the other person being wrong. If anything, what debating has taught me is the exact opposite, right? That you must understand opinions from both sides, and once you exit the debate room, that's where you can form the best of your opinions, being an informed person, because you understand the arguments from other sides. And when you understand it better, it actually increases your responsibility to be a lot more moderate. Instead of being hyper judgmental, you should be more understanding as to where they are coming from. And even though you know out of certainty that they are wrong, there are times where you can be very firm, stern. But being firm and stern is very different than being arrogant.
Yeah.
And I obviously use my own personal background in reminding myself that at one point in time I was that, right? I mean, my views were in direct opposition to what I believe today. Yet I could change. If I could change then, why couldn't other people change as well? So it's about really understanding where they're coming from. And at times, being young, some people may see that as a liability in being the voice of change because people always judge you based on the age and experience which you've gone through. However, it also means that you come often with a clean slate and the energy of the young and the passion in really wanting to shape the future. And some may see that more of an asset than a liability.
True. They said experience does not make you wiser. It's the evaluated and reflected experience that makes you wise. So is there any reflections that you had in recent years that when you're looking back from the time that you joined politics that I wish I could go back and fix it? Is there any example that you can think of?
Of course, a lot. I mean, on the top of my mind, quite a few. First thing first, I think if I could go back to that, I'll be focused a lot more on policies instead of programs, because policies last, programs are temporary. For example, some of the policies which have lasted 3 or 4 different prime ministers is Undi 18, the reduction of the voting age, which we were able to cement together in Parliament with bipartisan support. Automatic voter registration, the reduction of the youth age, and many others. So these are things which I think are great, but it's not enough.
Yep.
Being young, I obviously want to see a lot of things change very quickly. And I think I could have gotten double or triple of what I could get if I just focused on these core areas and core issues. Not to say that programs are not important, but I mean, you can have 100 other ministers doing the same. I like to focus on policies because policies outlast ministers. So that's one. 2 is that I should be a lot more calm and composed. Then I was like I was a firebrand, fighting on every single front. I think we should build more long-lasting relationships with everyone, so that then I think you get to impact change in the most meaningful way possible, knowing that you can be in government, opposition, in the middle, wherever, but it is those long-lasting relationships which will get the most meaningful of changes for a country.
That's true.
Instead of just being a firebrand and fighting everyone all the time.
Do you still have the energy?
I'm pretty sure I still do have it in me. But I must be a lot more calm, composed, and measured, because I think I can get 3 times more than being calm and composed instead of being hyper emotional. So to me, it's about the utility
Nice.
and optimizing the change. It's something which I learned throughout times. Final part, I definitely will focus a lot more on my mental health. Yeah, that's something which I completely know. I was like, this, I don't care. I'm just going to keep on barging the way forward, forgetting my absolutely no work-life balance. It's like work. What is life balance, right? It's work. So I think about finding that middle path, especially being young. I mean, while people say young is the time for you to hustle, which I agree on that part, but while you hustle, it's also important to have that balance. And especially being in a position in government, policy maker, you also want to set the right example for the Malaysian youth. So saying that, there's no work-life balance, forget it, may not be the best of messaging, especially when our generation is really a sandwich generation going through so much pressure, up, bottom, left, right, so much pressure. And really young people are living in different pressure cookers. So sending a message that you should have a life outside of work is also very important.
Oh, that's a very big topic that we will go to it.
Yeah.
But there's one reflection I want to bring you back, which is basically, I think, the story of you declining to pursue your studies to Oxford, which is literally you let go of one dream for another dream. If you have been to Oxford and coming back now, how things would be different?
I'm fairly certain I'll still be in politics, but not necessarily in the front line. To be honest, I didn't see that as a major trade-off, because in the end, my goal is still the same. I want to change my country. I want to see Malaysia become a developed country, governed with integrity, where multiracialism is celebrated, where we become the beacon of hope in Southeast Asia, the growth center in Southeast Asia, future-proof our economy, focus on green technology, all of that, right? I mean, but that's the end goal. Oxford equips me with the know-how and education
Yep.
to then get me there. Not going to Oxford, joining politics, which allows me to be at the epicenter of change, also allows me to realize that goal. So it's still very much goal-driven. So why I didn't go to Oxford, I was able to contest in an election, which then got me into parliament and subsequently to cabinet to impact those policy changes, which may not have happened if I had gone to Oxford.
Okay.
But alternatively, if I had gone to Oxford, maybe the path would be very different, but eventually I'll still be in policy making, maybe not in parliament, but advising ministers or prime ministers, which could be something which I would want to do in an alternative world. But I'm still very much goal-oriented. So yeah, I mean, obviously it would be fun to take 1 or 2 years off, you know. The UK is very different. Not much stress, no threats to me and my family members. So especially then in 2016, 2017, I'll never forget those years. But do I regret it? No. And there will always be a time for me to go back. And being in politics, you won't win all elections. You have to face that. And that's the truth and that's the reality. And when I can finally get my break, I will take up that opportunity to study in Oxford, Harvard, and that time will come.
So you joined the politic. What was reality versus expectation?
I think to some extent I'm quite lucky or unlucky, some may put it. From the very beginning, I already went through that baptism of fire. You know, it's not like the red carpet rolled in front of you. Like, first instance was like when I merely made a Facebook posting demanding for change and reforms. Immediately from there onward, all hell broke loose. Like, I lost my job as a part-time lecturer, as a debate trainer, as a policy researcher, and then subsequently my parents got threatened, my siblings got threatened. It's like very quickly.
What have I put myself into?
Yeah, exactly. But being young as well, I realized if that could happen to me, it could happen to anyone else. So instead of backing down, I fought even harder. That's something which I picked up from my mom, right? You never give up. As long as your heart is in the right place, you keep on moving forward. So obviously initially I thought it was a lot more calm and, we sing Kumbaya together. Definitely not that. So it's really hellfire. But I quickly adapted. And I think the level of perseverance has gotten me to where I'm at today. No matter how tough it gets, it could be tougher.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know that there were many others before me who went through even worse experience than I did. And therefore I should be, to some extent, glad that I could at least do the things which I'm doing today because of their sacrifices.
So in New Zealand, there's this term called, like, whenever there's a younger member of the parliament, they will call them as the baby of the house.
Interesting.
And so they didn't call you baby. When you join, they call you like chuchu, literally like grandson.
Call me a baby cat as well, like kitten. Which I don't take offense at all. And the guy who calls me a kitten is not my neighbor in parliament.
Wow.
Which is nothing bad. Good guy, actually. One thing in politics, you need to learn how to not take things too personally. So someone was like, oh my God, you should be very angry. You shouldn't be talking to him. This is your enemy. You should make sure that he goes to jail. I'm like, calm down. If everyone has that mindset, Malaysia will never progress, right? It'll be that vicious cycle of vendetta, hatred, toxicity, which I think hurts the progress of our country. And that's something which we need to learn from many other countries. I mean, Jokowi, when he came in, appointed his arch nemesis, Prabowo, into cabinet. Sandi Uno, who ran against him, also into cabinet. And look at the level of stability which Indonesia has, especially when it comes to not just stability, but competency as well. You look at World War II. I mean, how did a bunch of frenemies banded together to beat Hitler, right? I mean, it's not love. It's really common interests, common goals coming together. But in the end, there is an ultimate goal, which is good for all. So
I remember this photo of you that I'm not sure whether it was the first time you were speaking in the parliament. And then there was a lot of people around you was just like looking at you, right? So do you still remember the first time when you were talking, you stand up to talk, and then like everyone was looking at you?
Oh, definitely.
The feeling that you had?
Yeah.
Would you be able to describe it for us?
I think my first appearance in Parliament was when I had to swear oath and allegiance to take up my seat. And to me, that was really a life-changing moment for me, because then I already knew I was going to become a minister as well. But I knew with that comes crazy amount of responsibility, because if I were to fail,
Yep.
that will be used as a precedent to no longer appoint anyone young into cabinet, what more, even to contest as a member of parliament. So I wanted to ensure that it will be worth it. So even if I'm changed, I'll get a lot more young people in. And to some extent, I think not just me, but I think cabinet then was able to do it. And now you look today, there are so many more young people for all parties, right? Including from PAS, Islamic Party, including from Bersatu. And now, I think if you look at the composition of young MPs, it doubled, tripled from last time. And last time, people said, oh, there's already a lot. No. Now there's even more. And that's great, because it shows that, being young, you do not have a monopoly in parliament. And now there's so many great young talents from all sides. And I look forward to working with all of them. But yeah, occasionally, obviously, there'll be those who will deride. I remember then, call me cucu, budak-budak, budak mentah. I mean, there's so many different words.
So when they call you grandson, and then there was this like back and forth between a couple of members, of course, Tunem was talking, and then you call him grandpa. Okay.
I call him grandpa. I'm fairly certain I did not call him grandpa. He will be offended if I did call him grandpa.
No, it was just a back and forth right there. And then, so was that like now you're thinking about it, so do you see it like as a good response, or is it more of like a reaction?
I think I know which video you're referring to. That was I think sometime in 2020. I remember when that exchange happened, many people were pissed off, saying, "Oh, why it's like bullying in parliament? Why they're undermining young people?" Some extent, yes, that's undermining young people. But on the other hand, I also try to see where they are coming from, and instead of being pissed off at them, address the issue at hand.
Yep.
Because once you fall into their game of name calling, they call me young, I say, hey, you're just inches away from grave, about to die. Would that solve everything? Of course not. It will not solve anything, right? Instead, I wanted to redirect the issue back to the actual issue at hand, which is about reforms, job creation. So I don't want to get sucked into that debate, which obviously they're experts in and they'll win. And I'll never be able to beat them at that debate. So focus on core issues. And weirdly enough, those who called me all those names are now good friends. I mean, in parliament and outside the parliament. But that's what happens when you don't take things personally.
Yep.
Yeah.
True. So now the global proportion of MPs under 30 has edged up to 2.6%, which when I was reading about the latest IPU report on youth participation in national parliaments, which is Norway definitely standing on top, which is about 13.6%. So, which they have like the members of the parliament are under the age of 30.
Yeah.
So you joined the parliament at the age of 25.
Yeah.
Is that correct? 2018.
Correct.
Why is it so difficult for the younger generation to join like politics in early years? Because based on my reading, the youngest person who's ever joined is about 42 years ago at the age of 22. And this is like 40 years later. It means that Malaysia has never had a problem of like young people join.
Yeah.
So what is it about politics that is not attracting the young people?
Young people are structurally disadvantaged from joining politics. Because politics in Malaysia is still largely conventional and hyper-partisan. So you need to be part of a big political party or political movement. And once you are part, you are merely a member, and then you have to climb up. And then to climb up, you have to do favors, you have to build patronage structures, you have to wait in line. There's this conception, you have to wait in line for a very long time, and then you need to have money, because if not, you cannot finance your campaign. The young people do not have money, they have debt, not money. Unless you come from a very rich family, then even coming from a rich family, then you will be judged because you are young. So there are many things, right? So it's actually quite tough. But my suggestion is that instead of going through the same cycle, you take a sledgehammer and you break that damn cycle down, right? And then you do something completely different. You disrupt, right? So you set up your own party and then you get a lot more young people in, give them a chance. Win or lose, they get experience. You get to improve. Instead of running the same old patronage structure, you break it down and use social media, direct communication with voters. Instead of giving them money, you give them hope and change. And you actually present your plan and a vision which can captivate their minds instead of captivation through money.
Yep.
So there are many other ways for you to do it. In all parts of the world, we have different forms of disruptions. Corporate disruptions, with tech startups coming in. In politics, it requires a level of disruption as well. So if you're someone young, knowing that you are structurally disadvantaged because you don't have the experience, you don't come from a big party, you don't come from a political family, you don't have the level of money like others, well, don't go through the same route. Because if you go through the same route expecting for the same results, for different results, it's not going to happen. Right? And there'll be many others who will want to stop you from getting there. But try something else. Risky, definitely. Tough, 100%. But it's worth it. Because you know you are opening up the doors for many others to come in as well.
Sure. So you have gone through an accelerated growth and then you reach something that many people have never been experiencing it in Malaysia. So my next question is a bit hypothetical. So Sanna Marin become the youngest ever prime minister of Finland at the age of 34. So now you are 30.
Yeah.
Do you have a chance to break that record?
No idea. In the end, it depends on the Malaysian Malaysian voters. But one thing which I can tell you is, in Malaysia, those who often dream to become prime minister often does not become prime minister.
Do you have that dream?
Yeah. So as I shared before, don't dream that dream.
Okay.
Because then you start losing focus on doing actual job and actual work.
Do you have that dream of becoming a prime minister one day?
I just shared with you, don't have that dream.
Don't have that dream.
It's better not to have that dream. Yeah. Because again, those who have that dream often will not get there. Because in the end, they start to lose focus. It's all about power, no longer about idealism and other things.
Do you see yourself as a prime minister one day?
I just shared with you just now that I have that dream. So my dream is to focus on that change. Whether in that position or not, if you can impact the same change, why not? And that's where politics is about compromises. The last thing you should want is to play the same old game, get there, but then not being able to implement those changes because you are tied down to the structures of power. So at times, partnering up with others who could be better. So there are many other ways in which you can skin a cat, not literally skin a cat to get there, by helping or working with others, but impacting the same change. Yeah.
So for a young person who has two paths, so if they go for corporate, definitely they can climb up the ladder maybe much faster. If they don't like it, they can actually move to a different company or even a different country, right? So what is it about politics that might basically better off than not joining the corporate and trying to go for it?
I mean, two very different fields, right? I mean,
True.
Corporate is a lot more of profiteering, commercial interests. Politics is really about service. I mean, if you want to be hyper rich, then have a private sector job. You can make your money there. But in politics, it's not the path to make money. Obviously, you have the right to engage in your own business practices, but as long as it doesn't overlap with your public profile. So I think really it's about finding that middle path. If you pick politics, then you must prioritize public service first, above and beyond everything else.
So it goes back to the value of the person.
Correct. Yeah. And it's also, that's what politics requires. Public service.
Okay. As someone who's been in Malaysia for, I think, more than 15 years, if anyone outside of Malaysia stop me and say can you say a name of someone, a young politician in Malaysia that I know of, and perhaps these are the people that the future of the Malaysia is relying on, I would definitely mention your name. I know your name, as a foreigner here.
Yeah. Very kind of you. Yeah.
who are the other like young Malaysian in politics that we can actually like look at them and say, okay, these are the future? If you want to mention some names also.
I mentioned a lot because and not just from one party and not just from government parties, including those in opposition. There's a lot. In opposition, I think people like Fadli Sha'ari, MP of Pasir Mas, is decent. At the same time, IR Khairul Nizam, is also from PAS. Government, you have people like Rara, MP of Bentong. Those outside of government, but who I believe should be in parliament, people like Sharil Hamdan, formerly UMNO, now I think suspended or expelled, God knows which one. It's actually quite a lot. In parliament alone, now there's a lot. There's definitely, I think, more than 10, maybe 20 young MPs. Much better than last session. And I think those numbers will just grow because now we've locked in the reduction of voting age. So the competition to win over young voters will get even more intense, which I think is great because it leads to greater disruption and innovation in politics. But again, the dream for a successful Malaysia is one in which leaders can be replaced anytime, but our institutions will remain and guide us forward.
That's true.
So it's not just about me and few people. My hope is that when you go out next time and someone asks you this question, you will be able to name 5, 10, God knows how many more. That will be great. Then I know that, we've built a strong system in Malaysia.
And the succession is strong.
Yeah. You mentioned about Sana Marin just now. Don't just look at Sana Marin. How did Sana Marin get there? She had a group of young leaders who are now already in her cabinet.
That's true.
And a lot of them are also MPs and backbenchers. And I think Finland, to some extent, already has a great track record of getting more young leaders in. And it's not just in Finland. Scandinavian countries, they're going down that trend. Europe is going down that trend, where they're giving a lot more opportunities to younger leaders, not just in government, but even in private sector to lead. So I think that trend will reach Asia, or has already reached Asia, but needs a little bit more push for us to move forward together.
True. Nice. So you have established Muda. What's in it for young people?
So one is, as I shared just now, young people are structurally disadvantaged, not just in politics, but I think in many other fields as well. So I think it's about disrupting Malaysian politics for good to ensure that we build a Malaysia which is truly multiracial, multi-religious, moderate, and one which we can future-proof our country. That means greater investments into climate change, focusing a lot more on institutional reforms instead of a personality-driven politics, ensuring that there's equity in distribution of wealth. That means more progressive taxation policies. These are all areas which I think young people are very passionate about. So we need to get a lot more young leaders in. But while I say that, Muda is not a youth-exclusive party. I mean, our oldest member is 92 years old. Not beating Dr. Mahathir, is I think 98, turning 99. 92, it's old auntie. So when I asked, why Muda? I said, very simple. I mean, I want to see a future where my grandchildren can live a better life than my life today.
Nice.
Which is a very interesting note. But that's where you realize to foment genuine and sustainable change in Malaysia, when you talk about diversity, it's not just about the young and the young only, but it's about building bridges across divides, getting young, old, people from different races and religion, beliefs, political structures together, and then finding common ground to turbocharge that change for the country. I think that's what Muda should really focus on.
Okay. So I call someone who is in control of his life and career as someone who loves what he does, love who you do it with, love who you do it for, and love how you do it. What do you love about your work?
Service. Something which I, again, picked up from my family. And don't think, I mean, obviously to me, one of the best moments is when you're able to implement like a structural constitutional amendment which will like empower millions of people. So that's damn good. But that will not happen all the time. But when you're able, let's say, to just help a family be equipped with a few laptops and free internet, in which that family would not have obtained unless you helped out. And then you see that family now doing much better and seeing the son now in a different university, the daughter in a different university, that is also as rewarding, right? Because you realize in the smallest of ways, you've made an impact. And trust me, that reward is so much more meaningful than being able to have fancy watches, fancy shoes, fancy suits, fancy cars, that's so much more meaningful. And that is what service is all about, right? It doesn't mean that you cannot live a comfortable life, you need to sacrifice everything. No, it means really finding that middle path, but acknowledging that you have to put the collective interest first over your own personal interest.
So what do you love about the people that you're doing your work with?
There's a very big group. Is it my team? Is it my constituents? Is it politicians who I work with? It's a plethora and it's a lot. But in the end, I like trying to work across aisles to reach common ground so that we can move our country forward.
And what do you love about the people who do your work for?
As I shared, I think I love witnessing how their lives can change with better policies, better actions, better assistance, better programs. And witnessing that change is priceless.
Okay. So, we reached towards the end of our conversation.
Yep.
So I have some fiery question for you.
Fiery, okay.
So let's see. So I name a few politicians
Okay.
and I want you to describe them in one word.
One word, okay.
If two, maybe can. But
Okay lah,
one would be better.
short lah. Okay.
Tun Mahathir.
Statesman.
Dato Seri Anwar Ibrahim.
Courageous.
Mr. Khairi.
No, perseverance. That's better. Perseverance. 20 plus years, come on. Yeah.
Mr. Khairi Jamaluddin.
Future.
YB Hanayut.
Compassionate, or add hyper in front. Hyper compassionate.
Okay, the last one. Be very careful with your answer.
Sure, no problem.
Syed Saddiq.
How do I be careful? That's like judging myself, you know.
One word describe you.
I like to say future as well.
Okay. So to finish things off, we have this game called Final Confessions, which I'm going to ask you.
I'm about to die, you know.
It's a series of like quick fire random questions,
Yeah.
and then so you must answer it as quickly as possible.
Sure.
So there we go. So the first one is like, what is it something you always believed to be true, but you no longer do?
Always believed to be true, but no longer do. That politics is all about idealism.
What does your perfect day off look like?
Day off. Doing the most random of things, like going to Sunway Lagoon. Or
Can you still go?
I do. Without people realizing, but I do. And that's the most fulfilling thing ever. It doesn't only have to be Sunway Lagoon, but doing like random things, you know. Especially if it's like theme parks. Yeah.
When was the last time you went to theme park?
Before lockdown. Because since lockdown and after, it's like non-stop of like hustling and working. That's me sharing no work-life balance.
Sure.
Yeah. I can't recall my last holiday. I seriously cannot recall my last holiday. Yeah.
Okay. Guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure. Must also feel a sense of guilty, so it cannot just be pleasure. But guilty pleasure. I don't know what is guilty, but I watch like random movies in the cinema after midnight, but I sleep in the cinema.
So you feel guilty for all the actors and actresses there.
To some extent, and also like,
You're not watching.
why do you just sleep at home, right? If you don't intend to watch the movie.
How old you were when that happened?
Yeah,
to
it
you?
still happens until today.
Okay.
Until today. And to me, that's very therapeutic. It's therapeutic. So people ask why watch this random movie. I don't need to watch it. I'll sleep in the cinema. And when I go there, I put an aim to sleep in the cinema. It's not like...
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice. So what's the biggest risk you ever taken?
Well, there's a lot. Joining politics is very risky, especially at that time of the year, especially when the alternative was to go to Oxford with full scholarship. And coming from a lower middle income family, so that's like really a once in a lifetime opportunity, and politics can wait. That was a risky move, but one which I followed my heart.
Okay. So with whom would you trade places for a day?
For a day. Huh. What I've always wanted to do.
Or you have already achieved like all the people that you wanted to be like?
Definitely not like achieved everything. I don't know. I want to do something like hyper adrenaline rush. Random. It doesn't have to be a person, but like I've always wanted to like you know the one taking care of cats, like a lot of cats. I know what you call that, but it's not a typical like a cat store. Not the cat store. It's like, you know, the cat hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then be surrounded by so many cute cats.
Okay.
And taking care of them. That's a stress-free life.
I
like
heard
that.
about the bad news too.
Yep. So also why cats? Yeah.
Okay. So what's the worst piece of advice you ever got from someone?
Worst piece of advice. Don't be in Malaysian politics. Don't be loyal to your beliefs, ideals, policies. Be loyal to a person.
Nice.
To me, that's not a good piece of advice.
Okay. So the next questions might put you a bit into trouble. So which of your siblings you're closest to?
It's trouble in general. Then until today, my other brother called Abdullah, Syed Abdullah.
Why is that?
Because we had a lot of random memories together when we were young, getting into trouble. So, yeah.
Okay. So if you could change one thing about your life, what would that be?
One thing about as I shared, I should be a lot more calm and composed instead of a firebrand. Yeah.
All right. And the last one is, do you sing in the shower?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't, right? Yeah.
What
Whether
is
a
it
good
about-
thing or not, that's immaterial. What's material is I do sing.
What is it about singing in the shower that is nice?
It's the stress-free zone, you know.
Echo that you get? The
No,
height?
it's more like no one will realize when you sing,
Okay.
especially when the shower is loud. Yeah.
So what Saddiq want to be remembered for?
Change.
Change.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Syed Saddiq, for being with us. It's an honor talking to you.
The honor is mine.
Thank you. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to our Shock Life Confessions podcast. Catch you on next episode. And till then, stay inspired.